We now have one last storyteller before the break. And I won't say too much about her other than just to bring her up on stage. Shay, well, what can I say? Why don't we make Shay very welcome to the stage. Please welcome Shay Hawke.
Oh, it's very bright out here. Okay, my story takes place in 1986. My friend Lisa and I were 24 years old. We were blonde, blue-eyed, and when I look back at the photos now, drop dead gorgeous. We didn't know it, of course. We didn't think we were anything sensational, but we were. So 1986, Bob Hawke was in the lodge at Yarralumla, and I grew up at the opposite end of Yarralumla in a brick and tile government house. Yeah, brick and tile government house, not the government house. And that part of Yarralumla was called Yarraslumla. What else happened in 86? So Hawke was in the lodge. Lisa and I were really restless. Canberra in 86 was a very claustrophobic place. I was third generation, I think Lisa's second generation. Everybody knew each other. You couldn't go anywhere without anyone knowing who you belonged to, and I unfortunately looked like my father and my brother, and everywhere I went I was Hawke's daughter or Hawke's sister. The Iron Curtain was on the way down, so things were changing in the world, and Lisa and I decided to go on the next big adventure. We were in search of the last frontier. So we didn't just go to Bali or Bangkok like other people. We booked a ticket with Air New Guinea and went up to Papua New Guinea, which sits on the top of Australia, for those of you who don't know geography. And the island of New Guinea is broken into two parts. One half belongs to the people of Papua New Guinea and the other half belongs to the Indonesian government, and that half's called Irian Jaya. And that's really where this story unfolds. And it's a pretty scary story for me, even when I tell it today. So we travelled through New Guinea, and we'd had some pretty good adventures through New Guinea. We got to Vanimo, which is right up near the border, and we decided we'd cross the border into Irian Jaya and see what was going on up there. We did this. We got on a plane, and there was 5 other people on the plane, and they were aircraft engineers from Qantas, Australia. And they needed a cook. And we said, well, 2 for the price of 1, and they thought that was a very good deal. And you can read into that what you like. So there we were, flying into Jayapura, which is the capital of Irian Jaya, part of Greater Indonesia. And we went to the airport, we went to the customs, the immigration people, handed over the passport, as you do. And there was a very serious looking, official standing there, and he stamped the passport, and there was a couple of young Papuan girls who worked for the airport there as well, and they were very smiley and happy noons and looky mews and speaking in pidgin English. But this bloke sort of stamped the passport and had a look at us, looked at the address, and then he said, "How's your father?" And I said, well, my father's fine, thanks. I've just left Canberra to get away from him. I've had to travel overseas to get away from my father and my brother and everyone else in my family that I look like. Then it occurred to me that, Dad did work for the government, and customs and border control was part of his brief, so, maybe he'd been here and they remembered him, I don't know. Anyway, we went down to the bank to change money, and I can't remember what the currency was, but we went to the bank and had to hand the passport over, because, when you're travelling in a foreign country, you've got to hand everything over every time you do anything. And the bloke at the bank said, "How's your father?" And by this time I thought, well, this is a very quaint Muslim custom, everyone asking about my father, because surely my father didn't come to the bank, even if he was working for the government at the time. Anyway, we went and booked into the accommodation. You could only get a 72-hour visa for Irian Jaya, a politically very unstable part of Indonesia at the time, 1986. But we were happy with that, We jumped on the local bus and, went and saw as much of Irian Jaya as we could, which wasn't much, the outskirts of Jayapura. We met up with the mechanics the next day, and they said, "Look, we can't have you come and cook for us. Their loss, really." Why not? Because immigration said no. They're a little bit nervous about letting too many people. They weren't really into tourism, not our kind of tourism anyway, not white fellas. It's okay for the Indonesian people to come to Irian Jaya for a holiday, but not white Australia. So they said, look, the deal's off, and, shit, you're not going to come and cook for us and do whatever else they had in mind. And possibly we had that in mind too, I don't know. To be quite honest, I mean, one of them was really cute, wasn't he, Lisa? Lisa's just sitting over there. She keeps me honest. So we lost the aircraft engineers, and we went to the airport the next day, 70 hours after we'd arrived, and we were a bit early. And we rocked up and they said, oh, the flight's not open yet, just take a seat, we'll call you when it's time. So we took a seat, and while we were seated, a queue emerged. So all the local Irian Chinese going for their annual holidays to Sulawesi. It was just before Ramadan, so there was a lot of people on the move. Anyway, the queue got really long and we thought we'd better join it, so we joined the queue. We got to the top of the queue and they said, oh, sorry, the flight's full now. It's like, well, what the fuck? Can I say that? I know there's a 12-year-old here, sorry. And they said, well, look, you know, the flight's full. It happens sometimes. We don't have a lot of people moving, but when we do, we do. And we said, well, what can we do? And they said, well, wait for the next one. And we said, oh, OK, well, when's the next one? And they said, in 72 hours. And we said, but our visa runs out in half an hour. And they said, well, you must go to jail. And they called the military police. So no kidding, I tell you true. These 4 guys came over with AK-47s and escorted us into a room and started interrogating us as to what our mission was and, you know, who were we? Well, we were Lisa and Shay. And what were we doing here? We're having a mad adventure. I mean, we were the wayward daughters of our very worried parents, it's true. And we couldn't convey this in the language barrier. There was a bit of a language barrier. Anyway, they said, no, what are you really doing here? And, you know, who are you working for? And why did you want to go to the highlands with the aircraft engineers? They knew all about that. And I started to get a bit worried. I mean, they had guns, they had machine guns, and the 2 women that were at the airport when we arrived were in the adjoining room and we could see them through a glass window. And we're sort of looking at them thinking, you know, get us out of here. And then it occurred to me that, you know, I had been a peace activist, and Lisa as well, and maybe they'd got on to Interpol and found out that I'd chained myself to the odd US warship gangplank. That I'd tried to intercept a US submarine on a ketch. That I'd been arrested on Hiroshima Day trying to commemorate the people who died in the nuclear blast. And it occurred to me that they'd gone through Interpol and they'd found this out about me and they were very worried. And look, they had reason to be worried because at the time I was considered a threat to Australian and American national security. I couldn't get a visa to go to America, which is one of the reasons why we didn't go there as the last frontier. And these days, you know, I'd be called a terrorist. But I wasn't. We were just these peace activists and we were mad as cut snakes, Lisa and I then, and we still are. Anyway, so I worried that they'd found out about my activist past and that's why they were asking all these questions, but they still wouldn't let us go. And the plane was still on the tarmac. And, you know, Midnight Oil going around in my head, you know, all these activist songs, and I was going off on a bit of a tangent with my thinking and I wasn't very well. The food had got to me and I really needed to go to the loo. And when I need to go to the loo, I need to go now. And so I sort of sign languaged and pidgin Englished to these people that I needed to use the bathroom. And so they called in one of the girls from the adjoining room, the ones that we met on the first day. And one of them took me to the bathroom, and this is what happened. She pushed me into the cubicle and locked the door. And I thought, all right, it's on for young and old here. And then she said, read this, then swallow it. So I read it. And then I swallowed it because it said, tell your father, Bob Hawke, that genocide is happening in our country and we need his help. And I thought, oh my God, they think I'm that Hawke's daughter. So what to do? I'd left Lisa in the interview room with the 4 guys with the AK-47s. That was probably a dumb thing to do. I marched back in there with a sense of entitlement that I'd never had previously and I've never had since. And I, you know, handed on the hip thing. And I just looked at him real straight like, you know, my father's not going to be very happy when he finds out how you've treated me. There's a plane on that tarmac and I want to be on it. And they set us free. The postscript is we were escorted. I forgot to say the bit about the story ain't broke, don't fix it. But if the story ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm not going to go in there and say, yeah, I'm not that Hawke's daughter. I'm that Hawke's daughter and we want to get out of here. And it worked. And the plane was full and we stood in the aisle next to row 15 all the way to Sulawesi, island hop, the whole way, on, off, on, off, on, off. But the moral of the story is, don't fly Garuda.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Shay Hawke.